Hey, how's everybody doing? Hey, today I have a very special guest. The famous Mr. Andrew Kessler is here with us. Thanks for hopping on the pod.
Yeah, we're going to use the term famous very, very loosely there. So I appreciate that intro. It's good to see you, Derek.
Yeah, no, this is great. So, for those of you that may not know Andrew, so Andrew works with Athletes First. He's one of the top agents in the country. Works with individuals like Michael Pittman Jr., Tyler Lockett, Dax Hill, Justice Hill. If you're from Tulsa, pretty much, you probably have heard about him or at least spoke to him. Um,
I, lo- I
but
love I love Booker T. Washington High School. It's been a good spot for me.
That's it. That's it. But I also want to, just share a little bit about how would you explain the work that you do. So when you're sitting down, you're talking across the table from a parent or a kid. How are you usually breaking it down to them?
When we're talking about future representation,
Yes.
Uh, really, and I've done this, for over 20 years now. Not to date myself, but some things have changed and some things haven't changed, right? So some of the details now that you talk about when you're talking to guys even younger, either earlier in their college careers. Or even I'm not a huge fan of doing this, but you do it a little bit even when guys might even be in high school or entering college, and you're actually talking about deals that they're going to potentially have in college for playing or off the field. Um, so some of the particulars have changed versus like when I started, and you would typically start talking to a guy maybe during his final season of playing, during his senior season, or maybe a year before you thought he'd enter a draft. But the most important things and the values and the principles are all the same. You're talking about what you can provide in terms of expertise and service, and what I can do to help a player's career, because obviously it's only a small part of it, because they need to have the God-given talent, and then of course the drive to want to do it, and some good fortune. When I say good fortune, I don't mean sort of just blind luck, but some guys have super athletic bodies and are
Yeah.
more than talented and can't stay healthy, right? And some guys are blessed with great health, and there's some stuff you can do to keep yourself healthier, and some stuff you can't control. So what I try to do is explain, look, here is my role that I can play in your career and help your career be a bit better, right? I can't get you to play in the NFL if you're not good enough. And if you're a fringe NFL player, I'm not going to be able to get you a contract like you're a starter. But if you are good enough to play in the NFL, I can help you maximize your career, whatever that career is. So if you're a starter, you're going to be a very well paid starter. You're hopefully going to be a starter for longer. If you're a star to superstar, you're going to be, one of the highest paid players and maximize what you do on the field, off the field. If you're sort of a guy who fights every year to make the team. Well, how many seasons can we stack and getting you in the right situation so you could play 6, 8, maybe even 10 years, and
Mm.
maybe you don't make, by NFL standards, a great deal of money, but you still put yourself in a great position for the rest of your life, and what that leads to in different things. So that's what I try to do: show where can I add value, and then it all comes down to obviously. The person believing in you, trusting in you, feeling comfortable with you, because they don't believe, they don't trust, then what you're saying doesn't matter, right? That's true
Yeah.
in anything.
Man, that's the one thing I always appreciate, about you is, man, you're a straight shooter. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a lot of fluff. It's just like, hey, man, either you good or you're not. Like, just even thinking about some situations, I'm like, always that, I think that's what made me comfortable, even with the guys that, we have a chance to recommend somebody. Like, you're
Yeah,
always the top guys I bring up just because there's not a lot of fluff. It's just like, hey, man, like,
I try to be direct and honest, because that's the best for everybody. You know what I mean? You gotta be direct and honest about what's going on, and again, and if people don't like that or can't handle that, then okay, but that's probably not the right fit for me, and they're probably gonna have other issues. Because again, as you know, from being a high level college athlete, and seeing a little bit what the NFL is like, and your brother and a lot of your friends who played there, I mean, you know what it's like. It's a pretty direct business, so you have to be able to understand that and take good news and take bad news, and be honest with yourself about it.
Yep, yep, that's exactly it. Okay, so now, a lot of times what I see is, people ask, well, how'd you get started in the business? But I think what's even like more important is how has where you started in the business prepared you for the current landscape that you're in, right?
It's a great,
So,
that's a great question. That is a better question than the first one, actually. I think more interesting, more interesting.
yeah, yeah. So how's that? How is that? How has that helped you and prepared you for what you're seeing now with guys coming out of college getting
Right.
paid?
So I think what's prepared me is some things that I've learned over my career. Things that I've learned myself firsthand and things that I learned from other people. I'll go back to two things initially that I learned from two other people who were sort of mentors of mine, and I saw have a lot of success. One, early on from Tom Condon, who's retired now, Big Tom, who I worked for and with when I first started, was he was talking to me about how I don't maybe want to quite say invent, but he was really at the very forefront of the pre-draft training part of the industry, right?
Mm,
When
yeah,
you sign, you're not just going to work out at your school with your strength
yeah,
coach. You're going to go to a facility and very specific training, and that initially when they were doing that, some people thought, why are you going to spend all this money on this on the players? And it's a big investment, and it's difficult, and it's hard. You don't need to do it, but like you need to sort of look for ways to improve what you're offering, to
yeah,
improve your services. You need to be willing to take some risk. You need to be willing to invest money to make money, and you need to kind of if either be a bit ahead of the curve or at least with the curve and willing to change, right? And so that was something with a really good example because when I started with Tom, it was already par for the course. The guys that were going to do that level of pre-draft training, but it had only been par for the course maybe for 6 to 8 years. And again, and Tom really explained to me how they started their program at IMG, really at the forefront of that, right? Then
yeah,
another thing, so willing to say, hey, look, you know, we're going to represent guys in college for college deals, both, to play football and off the field. Yes, in my perfect world, I would like to just sort of initially talk to guys probably about a year before they're going to enter the draft, but recognizing that now, you have to be earlier, not all
mm,
the time, but some of the time with that, right? And
yep,
then another thing that I learned from another, great agent mentor of mine who's also retired now, Jim Steiner, who was in the business for a very long time, goes back to the 1970s, represented Jerry Rice amongst other many legends. What Jim told me was, especially in football, and this is a little different than some other sports, there are always a lot of good players to go around. Just because of the number of guys who play, right?
yeah,
And that. So by the same token, it's not like now, oh my God, like who is the best 10th grade quarterback in the country? I need to go find that kid because like look, like if it made sense and there was some connection there where there was a top 10th grader and you're going to talk to him and thinking about college in a few years in the NFL in 7 8 years, like maybe, but also like there are going to be enough good players for you to represent and work with, and it's not like a race to you have to get to this guy or that guy because there are going to be plenty of good guys coming from different places and guys develop at different times, and we see that all the time. And a great example of that is Cam Ward, right? This year
yeah.
he was a 0-star recruit out of high school and went to play college ball at Incarnate Ward, and no disrespect to that school, but that wasn't because he turned down going to UT or A&M, right? So,
Yeah,
those schools weren't calling for him, and they weren't even calling for him after Incarnate Ward, right? Then he goes to Washington State and is in school for 6 years, and then becomes number one overall pick. So, like, there are always enough good players to go around in football, and enough good players to find who you can work with. So those two pieces of advice, and then kind of incorporating them in the current landscape are two things that I think you help me right now. Again, being willing to do new things, being willing to take some chances, maybe being willing to do some things that you're like, maybe I'd rather not do this, but it does make sense. Or in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to do this, but I do. But also remembering that again, like if you do a good job for people And if you do things the right way, and you have some ability, and now I have a lot of experience, there will always be good players to work with.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of makes me think about like looking at the corporate sector. It's like how much of how much of a risk is it if you're investing in the right talent, right? It's like if you can
Right.
take
Sure.
somebody who has that much talent and you're able to throw some dollars that way to kind of sure up that investment, make it a more enjoyable experience, and take care, remove some of that service right work that they would otherwise have to try to figure out on their own. um and then just almost like multiplying that right now, or making it earlier, or a new iteration of it, with maybe meeting them earlier in college for some guys.
Yeah, well, again, just making, again, like, like you sort of said, like, smart investments. Like, is this worth it? Is it not? Because there are, again, there's lots of players out there, and, like, one thing that we've looked at too, as a business, and I don't think we're unique in this. It's like, hey, obviously players we talked to in college, we've always thought about the NFL, which is still the case. I mean, my business is represent NFL football players, but there is in the player representation space, big picture here, right? There is
Yep.
a business where you could represent college players, and there are obviously even more college players than there are pro players, major colleges. Let's just talk, kind of Power Four in football,
Yep.
and right beyond, where now, they're not making 20, 30, 40, $50 million a year yet, or anytime soon, but there is a business representing college players who probably aren't going to play in the NFL, and doing deals for them, and charging a not a big amount, but a fair amount. And there is a business there, and there's a lot of volume there. And we've even looked at, as an agency, that, hey, we are going to do some of that, right? Not we would do deals for college players. Again, got to obviously still be worthwhile deals, but I'm talking about the deals to play, not just not so much the true marketing deals, but for guys who we don't necessarily think are pro prospects, and if they become pro prospects, great, and if they don't, that's okay too, because we represent them in college. So just, again, just ways the business, the entire player representation sphere has changed, being open to that and looking for that. And it's like, in the past, if you were talking, again, to a Big 12 quarterback who had, you know, was going to be an undrafted player with very minimal chance to ever do more than the practice squad in the NFL, that wouldn't make a lot of sense business
Yeah.
wise,
Yeah.
in our world. But if that guy's a Big 12 star now at a school, and he's making seven figures, and he's going to do that for several years in college, well, that's a profitable client, if you're representing him in college, and then you kind of see what happens after that. So, again, being open to new things and new ideas, and kind of, like you said, the definition of what is a good investment and what isn't. That's changed a little bit, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, with kind of staying in that vein, what's one of the biggest mistakes over the past 20 years, right, that you've been doing this? Like, what's one of some of the biggest mistakes that you see maybe guys or families make that they could avoid, and how could they avoid it?
I think, another good question. I'd say that the biggest mistakes that I see people make are, they sort of, maybe, picking an agent's important. Don't get me wrong. It's what I do. It's important. But people almost get over involved in it. You know what I mean? A player and their parents, you don't need to talk to 30 different agents and agencies. You can talk to, four to five, six, seven, eight, maybe at the most. And again, like, you get an idea, because if you're a player of a top caliber, it's going to be the top people reaching out. If you're of a little lower caliber, maybe a mix. If you're more like a further down the line guy, it's gonna reflect that. But you don't need to kind of overdo it, and you don't need to treat it like this is the biggest decision of your life, because it's important, but it'll be like, again, like, I'm going to buy a house, I'm hiring a real estate broker. It's important who you hire, but it's not the biggest decision of your life. I'm
Yeah.
I'm hiring an investment advisor. That's very important, but again, it's not a lifelong contract. It's a big decision, but you could, it's not, it's not like, hey, I need a heart transplant. Who's going to do that? That's a big decision. That's a big
Yeah.
decision, because,
Yeah.
like, if that goes wrong, that's a different kind of problem, right? So, or again, we're like, I'm gonna get married. Like, that's a big decision. I'm gonna have kids. Like, these are really big decisions. Life changing, and it's not quite of that magnitude. Again, not to sell short what I do. So I see people kind of overthink it, and then
Mm.
that causes them, in my experience, not to make the best decision sometimes. So that's one thing. Another mistake I see is, quite frankly, sometimes people get too focused on the pre-draft part of it, in the training, which is important because there is value added there, and you want to get picked as high as possible, and that gives you more opportunity and more money and all that. But remember, we talked about some of the guys, like Lockett, or obviously, like another my long time guys, Robert Woods. Like,
Yeah.
Lockett's going to his 11th year, Woods is going to his 13th year, Lake and Thomason is 11th year. Even, Justice now is deep into his career,
Deep.
right? And so it's like, your relationship with your agent is a long term relationship, right? It's a long term relationship, and you don't want to just base it off of what's going to happen for the next 3 months. That's important, but again, like, the training programs are very important, but like, if you're talking to the right people, like, it's a little bit like picking between Alabama and Texas and Ohio State and A&M in terms of, like, the strength staffs and the weight rooms. Like, they're all really good, right? I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
what matters more is the people there. And so it's like, I tell guys, same thing, right? Like, I'll go back to getting married. Like, um, you wouldn't base who you'd want to marry off of what the first 3 months of marriage would look like, right? You'd be thinking about
Man.
30 years, right? Hopefully 30 plus years. So the same thing with a career. And again, the guys I mentioned, that's what I would, that's what I would say. Again, it's like, like, because I know, him well. It's like, someone like, Justice going into year 7, and Tyler year 11, Robert year 13, and other guys that represent a long time. One of my guys, Sean Mannion, played 9 years, and now he's coaching, and I'm representing him for that. So it's like, these are, I'll represent, for Sean coaching, for 20 plus years, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully, though, that's where you should think about the relationship, not the short term so much.
I love that. I love that. So okay. So now let's say somebody's sitting in your room. How would you vet an agent? If for those that are vetting agents, how would
Right.
they go about it?
So I would say, you want to start with, you don't want to penalize someone. Not everyone needs to have my level of experience, right, or more. And
For
not
sure.
everyone needs to be with an athlete's first or a CAA or something like that. So you don't, but you would like to say, okay, you know, let's start with this. What you don't have to say it this way, but how can you explain to me concisely, what makes you competent and qualified to do this job for me, right? And
Hmm.
if someone's only represented two players in their life, and one of them was drafted, one of them wasn't, it does not mean they're not qualified and competent to do the job, but they're going to have to explain why they are in a different way than I would have to explain it, right? And
Yeah.
when I was early in my career and I was working for Tom, or even when I first started A1, and I'd been in the business but hadn't, myself been the lead or co-lead agent on so
Yeah.
many guys, I would have to explain that too. Well, hey, great, Andrew, like, IMG sounds good or CA sounds good, A1 sounds good, but how we know we're okay just with you versus Tom or Dave Dunn or someone like that. So
Yeah.
so explaining why you're competent and qualified, right? Which, again, for me, is pretty easy. And you don't want to be, like, you're not going to be an asshole about it. You're not just going to be like, well, I made Jordan Love the highest paid player in the history of the NFL. Of course I'm qualified. Like, you're not going to do it that way.
Yeah.
But when you're fortunate to be able to say stuff like that, and demonstrate stuff like that, and that's known, it certainly helps. But so explain why you're competent and qualified. And then, I don't think you say, well, why can I trust you? Because that's a little bit of a leading question. And I think the way to, get trust in someone is to kind of get to know them, not have them answer that. But that's what I'd be looking for. Can I trust this person? And of course, there's something of, like, trust your gut and an instinct and a feel that you get. But also, if you ask certain questions or listen to what they say, that can build trust too, right? Like, if someone is making a presentation, you were talking about things, and you sort of catch them contradicting themselves, that would be a sign to me how trustworthy are they or how competent they are, right? Or like
Yep.
you ask a question and maybe you, because you can sense this, they sort of shift the answer. You think they're shifting the answer, so it's what you want to hear. Maybe that's not exactly the true answer. Like, how much can you trust them then? Like, not every question's answered with an answer that the person likes, right? That's life. So, so again, competence and an ability to represent and qualification, and then can you trust them? Because if you can't trust them, that ends it, right? And
Yeah.
then if you feel the person is qualified and competent, you can trust them, right?
Yep.
Then I think you get into more of some of the nitty gritty details about the training program and day to day and very specific, and off field marketing and things like that. And if you feel good, good about those things. And then the last pillar I always say is, you want someone who you like too, right? Like, you might have remembered me saying this or to you or to your brother or your mom. Like, it doesn't need to be your best friend. It doesn't
Yep.
necessarily need to be the person who, hey, if I have one person to go out to dinner with or one person to go watch a game with, it has to be them. And that can be, but sometimes that is not maybe great either because it's almost like, too much of just a straight friend relationship. But you want it to be someone when the phone rings, you're happy they're calling. You're not like, oh man, I got to talk to this guy, right? Someone
Yep.
you're happy, hey, I'm coming to a game. Awesome. Be fun to see, someone who you enjoy the relationship with. And I do think that's with an agent and some of the stuff you go through your career, which inevitably kind of has an ebb and a flow to it and ups and downs, that's important. And, maybe more important than, again, you're picking a surgeon, like, you just want to do the surgery well. You don't really need you want to trust and be confident, but like you don't really, you're not really looking to have that kind of friendship with him, right?
Yeah.
But with an agent, I think it is different because again, you want someone who you like talking to because you're going to have great conversations, tougher conversations in between, personal conversations at times, very personal. So I think it's important it's someone that again you like talking to and you don't feel like, oh man, ugh, all right, I gotta suck it up and spend an hour with this guy. Like that's not who you want.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I always tell people for athletes, I'm like, you're trying to, because this is on the financial side, and we got a couple guys, but it, I've always explained it that you're trying to bridge the gap between knowledge and trust, right? And I
Right.
think like for like money, it's like, well, they might trust their mom and their dad or their uncle, but they don't have the knowledge or the expertise to actually execute, or not make
Right,
a
yeah, right,
mistake.
yeah, right. Most, a lot of times not. I mean, sometimes they do, but
Sometimes,
sometimes not. Or even it's someone who's very, very bright and was very successful. Again, I'm not a financial advisor.
yeah,
My dad is as gifted an attorney as there is, and he's not a financial advisor. He has a financial advisor. That's not what he does. So sure, there's different things, and some of my clients have parents who are unbelievably accomplished in their fields, but it's a different field than mine. So their expertise is different.
I agree. So could you provide an example? Maybe, if you can share, you don't have to share names if you don't want to, but what's an example, of you kind of helping somebody navigate a contract or an NIL negotiation? Like for guys that haven't seen that or encroaching upon that,
So
like
we're talking
practically
about
what
are we
that looks
talking
like.
about an NFL player or a college player or what type of thing are
It's
we?
up to you. I think I think it would be well. Let's narrow it in. So let's say college player. Let's say have you helped
Okay,
a
so
college
so so
player?
so a college player, I'll give sort of a general thing because I have advised guys on this.
Okay.
I think in college, it's very important if your goal is to get to the NFL, and if that's realistic for you, that while you want to obviously get paid and get paid well, because you don't know what's going to happen, and there is real legitimate money out there, that you don't want to lose sight of the big picture and you don't want to like make a transfer decision or a non-transfer decision purely based on money, right? Like when you're a free agent in the NFL, especially guys who are first time free agent, again, 32 teams, they're all pro teams. They all have a chance. Like sometimes straight up, like you will go for the best contract and that makes sense a lot of the time, right? Particularly
Yeah.
depending on the player and the position.
Mhm.
If you are at a school, for example, and let's say you are a quarterback, right? And you're the starting quarterback at that school, and another school offers you 15% more money, but you're not sure you're going to be the starter there. No matter, because they tell you this, but there's another guy there, or you don't think that team is going to be very good or not as
Yeah.
good as the place you're at, or you're worried about who the receivers are, or maybe even more off who the O line is. I don't think you leave there, right? For let's say, you know, $650,000 versus $500,000. Because yeah, that's 150 grand is a lot of money, but $500,000 in college is a ton of money, and you're going to live great and you're going to save well. And if the difference, and if you stay where you're at, if you're let's say going to be a third round pick and have a shot in the NFL versus if things get screwed up, you'd be an undrafted guy and it's a long shot. And that's a huge difference. And I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but like
Right.
I think in college, and that's true at really at any position that sometimes like, hey, this school's offering me X, this school's offering me XXX, and they have a better role for me. Go, that makes sense, right? But it's not just about the deal. When like again, if I have a free agent running back and I got three teams and one's offering him five, one's offering him four, one's offering him three, you're probably going to the team that's offering five because they also, not only are they paying the most, they have the best role for you and things like that. With college, and again, the schools have different capabilities and the way the collectives functions, and the collectives will continue to function along with revenue share after a house. And again, because of the roster size is bigger,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a different equation there. Because again, from like the school's perspective, if they can pay it, they're happy to have two really good quarterbacks because if one gets hurt, they have another guy, and if one struggles, they have another guy. Even though that's not necessarily the best thing for both players, right? Because one's
Yeah.
playing and one isn't. So I think in college, that's something that you got to be careful of, right? When you're looking in the transfer portal, and it's not even as simple as the grass isn't always greener. It's more as simple as, hey, if if you're a guy who thinks you're not going pro and it's just about maximizing college, then it's a little different. That's more like being in the NFL. But if you're thinking about going pro, you got to think about where you can showcase your ability and where you can become who you can become. Again, I'll bring up Cam Ward again. Like, maybe Miami was his best offer, maybe it wasn't, but it was clearly the right place to go from a football standpoint,
Yeah.
and that worked out great for him. So making those decisions, because again, ultimately, again, if the top of the quarterback market in college is 4 or 5 million, the top in the NFL is 50 or 60. So we're still 10 times plus there, in all that. You can play in the NFL a lot longer than college. I think that's important in college. In the NFL, again, I'll speak sort of generally, but I
Yeah.
have lots and lots of examples of this. Um, just that some guys have immediate success when they get there, and they've all because look, most guys in the NFL, particularly guys who are drafted, particularly if they're drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds, pretty much, let's say, were sort of superstars at every level, right? From
Yeah.
little to high school to college. Maybe they saddle and cover, but pretty much were, they've never struggled or not struggled too much. Most people, right?
Yeah.
So now that is the case for some guys when they get in the NFL. It takes off right away, but for some guys it isn't, and there are plenty of guys where it doesn't, and they become great players. I've had many guys like that, even first round picks, high picks, where it didn't go great right away, and then they wind up having fantastic careers. Sometimes it doesn't go great because they don't play great. It's an adjustment. Sometimes they struggle with injuries early, and they had some bad luck, and they got to wait till they're healthy. Some guys just don't get an opportunity to play, right? Because of the situation they're in. So I think it's important in the NFL that if things don't go the way they always have, right? Not even the way they always have. Like, well, when I was little, I was the best. Then I got to middle school and I was the best. Then as a freshman, I was the best player on JV and I was moved up to varsity. And then high school, I was the man. Then I go to college, and maybe even if you didn't get all the college offers, well, wherever you went, you were the man pretty much right away, or the man by the end of your freshman year, and then you were, the best guy. So if you get to the NFL and it's not like that, even for a full season or 2 seasons, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that that's not going to happen if you don't, stay at it, stay grinding, keep improving. The margins get smaller. A 1, 2, 3% improvement is a big deal because everyone in the NFL is really good, right? Everyone in the NFL was the man in high school and the man in college. So, I think that's something that's important, and obviously if it works out well, then you get to do great deals for these guys. But supporting guys when things early on are maybe not great, or helping them, hey, where can you gain that extra 1, 2, 3%? How can you do
Yeah.
things to control what you can control to stay healthier, or how can you deal with, hey, I'm the playing special teams. I never really had to play special teams before. How can I work my way into the field? Or when I get an opportunity, how can I approach that? Or how can I get better by running scout team? Because I'm not a starter. I'm not out there with the ones, right? How can I
Yeah.
get better on scout team? Because again, it's not like college where there are 100 guys there. If you're the fourth corner, you're running scout team. You know what I mean? Way more than you're getting reps with the first defense, which is different than college. So it's so giving guys advice so they can hopefully get to that point where we're doing what I call the fun stuff, and negotiating big deals. But yes, many guys I could think of, just rattling off who, put it this way, your buddy Lockett is more of an exception than a rule in that,
Um,
he scored, he scores a touchdown the first time he touches the ball in the NFL, and is
yeah.
a Pro Bowler and All Pro as a rookie's return guy, scoring touchdowns in the preseason.
Yep.
That is more the exception than the rule. Um, again, just another guy been with me forever. I think of a guy, like Robert Woods. He had his first 1,000-yard season in his sixth season in the NFL. It was his first 1,000-yard
Mm,
receiving season. He's in Buffalo and they didn't have a great offense. Then he goes to the Rams, they're good, but he got injured his first year there. But so things go differently for guys. Or again, other just long-term guys. Lakin Tomlinson, first round pick of the Lions, didn't go the way he wants, goes to the 49ers, becomes a Pro Bowl player, has had a fantastic career, made a ton of money, still playing, has the longest current consecutive start streak in the NFL. So, again, like it can be like the way it was, with Tyler, but that is atypical even for really good players. Obviously, easy example, with Jordan Love has to wait 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers, right?
yeah.
Easy example there.
So you mentioned all these great players, right? The Jordan Loves, and you also say you represented Jamal Charles too when he was in his
Jamal,
peak.
yeah, his whole career.
Yeah.
Jamal's another one. Jamal, as talented a guy as I've ever worked with, and as great a guy. I love Jamal. But Jamal's first year had Larry Johnson there, played
Yeah.
some, not as much as he could have. Same thing, first half of his second year. And then by the end of his second year, starts rolling and was phenomenal. But yeah, that was early, and that was much earlier in my career, so I was learning even more then too. But yeah, he was a guy where again, all his success came, a year and a half plus into the NFL career. His NFL career is when his real success came. It was not instantaneous.
Yeah. So what's I think for like these younger guys or the guys going through the process right now, you've got a chance to work with so many great athletes, guys that have had like extreme tenure in the NFL. What is a common trait, a habit, or a tool that these guys usually have? Is there one that you see?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, of course, aside from talent, the common trait with all these guys is when they get in the building, when they get between the lines, when they strap it up, they are all unbelievably focused, unbelievably intense, unbelievably competitive. And they can have very different personalities off the field.
Yes.
Um, that too from knowing a lot of guys who played. So you can have very different personalities
Mm,
when you strap it up, you have to you have to have that unbelievable, like I said, focus, mindset, intensity, competitiveness, and then when you're away from the building, and again, it's different for different people in different positions, but you need to find a off-field process that works for you, and it's
man.
different for different guys. I mean, I know guys who are in the gym all the time. I know guys who, you know, work out on the track a lot. I know guys who, do a ton in their house. I know guys who, have the same personal coach or trainer for years, and some guys who that's not their thing. So there are many different ways to skin that cat, so to speak, right? But you
Yeah.
need to find a way that works really well for you, because if you don't do that, it's hard to keep up. But those are the two traits. It's that, you know when you're in the building, it's, you know all in all the time, that extreme desire, competitiveness. And when you're in the rest of your life, you're living your life, but you have your process for how you're going to continue to perform at a high level and stay in the league and do well. Hey, Derek, did I lose you?
Okay, you still there? You still there?
Yeah, give me 1 second, Derek. Sorry. Yeah, we got cut off. I can just pick it back right. Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So now what I was going to do is I was going to kind of
Did you got what I said before? I mean, we're good. We're good
we're
on what I
good. Yeah,
said.
yeah, it kept
Okay.
recording. So what
Okay.
I wanted to ask now is make it a little bit more internal. So for you, right, you talked about you starting off early in your career, getting to where you are now. You know, you don't have to, try to market or sell yourself as hard as you did before, right? Um, what has been your process? You know, has it been certain habits or tools or routines, right? What's the inside look for you, and on what's gotten you to where you are today?
Well, it's still, it's an unbelievably competitive business, probably too competitive in some ways
Yeah, yeah,
for what it is. So you always have to continue to compete. I mean, it is obviously when you're fortunate and you have a lot of good active clients, you don't feel like you constantly need to you don't need to add, you want to add quality. And I've been fortunate obviously to sign a lot of good guys out of college, had a lot of good players switch over to me personally when they're in the NFL, so that's a good thing. And A1's been very successful. But like I said, I think it's just continuing to show guys why you're a good fit for them, and identifying who's a good fit for you. Because look, there are some guys who are great players who I wouldn't be a good fit for them. Doesn't mean I couldn't do a good contract for them. Doesn't mean I couldn't give them good advice, but I wouldn't be a great fit for them agent wise. They wouldn't be a great fit for me client wise. So, so finding out who's a good fit for you, and then demonstrating to them, why you're a good fit for them, and continuing, to compete. I mean, you kind of learn a little bit, what your style is, in terms of, again, who, it's not, nothing's 100%, but, type of guys, just like anything else, man, right? Like friends, or, when you're single and dating, like you kind of know what kind of girls you get along with, right? Or
yeah,
what kind of guys like to hang you with, right? So it's like, you kind of know who you tend to get along with, and do well with, and vice versa. And then that's really where you want to focus. And obviously, A1, we have a great product to sell and explain to people. So again, I'm fortunate to have that with me and behind me. And again, it's really just identifying guys who are good players, who'll be good fits with you, and then again showing that ability, showing that competence. Maybe showing it in some ways that people don't think about. They're just thinking, oh, pre-draft training or contract. Showing other ways you really can add value, or times in life when advice is important. And then again, trust, and hopefully you know building that relationship is sort of an overused phrase. So I would say, a better way for me to say it is having a relationship which is going to lead to a successful business partnership, which again is not always there between two people. It's not always there in this business or others, and that's okay too. But most of the time I feel that 95% of the people I talk to, I could tell after one conversation, would I be a good fit for them, and would they be a good fit for me? Doesn't mean it always works out, but I could tell that. And if I feel it's not going to be a good fit, quite frankly, I usually don't pursue it really.
yeah,
And if it is a good fit, then I'm going to pursue it, and hopefully they feel the same way.
yeah, man. So, so as we're kind of wrapping it up, are there any last final words of wisdom that you'd like to give to anybody? Is there any question that I should have asked?
Well, are we talking about like a player and his family picking an agent? Are we talking about someone who wants to be an agent? What are we?
Yeah,
Who's
I
the
would
who
I
are
would
the
say if we
who
categorize
is
it,
the audience for the words of wisdom here?
yeah, I would say let's make the audience, let's say somebody who's coming out of college here in a
Okay.
year or two, right? And they're navigating this agent situation. Are there some words of wisdom that you would impart to them or their mom or dad that's watching this, that you would, over your years, like what's the most vital piece, right? Because I think
Yeah. Okay.
you may have six. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, I would tell them, look, be realistic, right? So if, um, six agents are you're talking to six agents, and again, don't talk to them. You're talking to six agents, and you like them all reasonably, and every time you ask, where do you think my son's going to be drafted? And they all say he's probably going to be somewhere between a third and fifth round pick. Unless you're talking to the wrong people with completely the wrong team info at the time, don't that's probably where he is then, right? Don't be that person who's like, oh no, he's a first, he's a second round. Maybe he will be, but they should be getting the info from the teams, and the teams don't know 100% during the season, and things do change. I mean, I've had 10 teams tell me a guy's going to go on Friday and he winds up being undrafted. And 10 teams tell me a guy's going to go early Saturday and he winds up being a first round pick, because a lot can change as you get deeper into the season and you do go through the pre-draft process. And I'm not talking about something crazy happens off the field, something crazy medical, just a different football evaluation. But, so listen to what information you're getting, even if you don't love it, and but accept it for what it is. Don't feel the need to search someone out who's going to tell you what you want to hear, because if that's what you need to do, that person's probably not the right person. And then from the people you're talking to, like I said, who do you feel comfortable with? Who do you trust? And who do you think can add the most value? And think long term. I do think it's reasonable to assume, especially if you're talking about a player who's going to be drafted, assume, if you're a parent, assume your son's going to play at least 5 or 6 years in the NFL. Hopefully more, but at least 5 or 6 years. So make a decision, hopefully for 5 or 6 years, and hopefully it winds up being even longer than that. But that's like the advice I would give. And again, into the player, I would give, it's very similar, but again, pick someone who you feel can add value to your life, add value to your career, who's very competent and you like. But again, like, that doesn't need to be the person who you necessarily want to talk to the most, or the first person you're going to call after a game or something like that. That's okay, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And make that decision. But it is important too. It's great to rely on parents are super important, or anyone who you trust, but it's also, it should be the player's decision, because it's the player's agent.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Where can people find you if there is a NFL guy, right, that's maybe, let's say, first through third round, right, who maybe looking at this process or looking at this video, or their parents are looking at this video, how can they find you?
Well,
Or you'll
I
find
probably
them.
don't. I'm not just gonna throw one. I might find them. Hopefully, I'm not gonna probably throw my phone number out
Oh
here,
yeah, no, no, no.
but I would say, you can go on the Athletes First website or social media and request to talk to me. My email, I'm fine. My email is akessler@athletesfirst.net,
Yeah.
which would be on the website too. You could send me an email, and I'm very responsive. Would find it. That's probably the best way to be the best way if it's a completely, sort of a cold introduction. But again, someone of that caliber is going to be getting contacted by a lot of people. And if it's not me, probably someone else from A1 is trying to reach out, because we have a whole internal process with how we do that. So we'll probably be finding you if you're of that caliber. Is my strong guess and intuition.
Yeah, man, you keep doing these podcasts, man. They're gonna need to get you a media person, get you an Instagram or something, man.
I don't know. That's probably where I should be more willing to change and adapt. I'm still not a social media guy, but these are fun, and especially, doing one, obviously, 4A1, with David Mulugeta, who's, my longtime dear friend and colleague, and, unbelievably successful agent, Brian Murphy,
Yeah.
are our CEO, and AJ Stevens, who runs that. So, doing it with friends like that, or doing it with you, obviously, your family, longtime friends and everything, and close. I'm more than happy to do it with anyone who falls into that category. So again, I don't think you're going to see me on Instagram doing videos, but I'm happy to do this.
Well, hey, thank you for your time and hopping on to our podcast. And man, wish you the best success. And thank you for everything you've done and said.
Awesome, Derek. This is fun, man. Please give my best to your brother, your mom, and hope your family's well. And maybe go. It's close to you now. Go see Lockett in Nashville, and maybe we'll be at the same game, and I'll see you this year.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's definitely on the schedule. We'll definitely be there. No
Awesome.
doubt. Thank you. And if you could stay on for a little bit, I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk to you. Okay.